Mr. President, I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and those stand approved. Real quick update so that we can get to Eric as quickly as possible and get him some time to make his presentation. You may recall back in July, I think it was July 15th, we appointed sort of an ad hoc committee, myself, David, Eric, Julie Roush, and I believe Zach. Did I miss anyone? Those folks volunteered to be part of, according to the minutes, to be part of a review of the fee schedule for Do It. And what we have determined, and I think I may have mentioned this quickly in the last meeting, what we have determined is that we need a larger review of fees across the county. And Bob has provided me with a substantial list of those fees with really, it's kind of a treasure trove of information, has the applicable state statutes and county ordinances that originally established those fees and the date of updates. So what will be happening early in 2022 is we'll be working to get those out to department heads to have them update those and then go through establishing a process or getting a group of people together. They're going to ultimately decide what fees are appropriate and move forward with amending those in one fell swoop, so to speak. So
I was going to, since Tom mentioned it yesterday at the department head meeting, I was going to send that out, and I've revised it a little bit more since the one I sent you. Do you want me to wait to send that out? I was going to tell people to, look at these fees and look for accuracy, and then also, am I missing some that we could? But do you want me to send it out
I would
now,
suggest
or?
we go ahead and send it out
Okay,
now.
okay. I was going to send it out probably today.
Yeah,
so
that'd be great. And then
I'll send to
obviously-
department heads.
Good.
And maybe a few others that, okay.
Thank you. And also, I put in front of you today, and I also added this to the Teams drive as well, or the Teams site. It's a summary of the ordinances that I went back and collected all of them that are relative to the mission and the work of Do It, going all the way back to 1998. And unfortunately, I just realized it's not included, so this is a draft. So if you notice typos or you have questions or in your review of what I've posted, if you see something else that you think is pertinent to the summary of the ordinances, please let me know. The goal would be to ultimately have a Cliff Notes version of basically why we exist and how we have existed over the years, how we went from when the system was first launched until today, basically. And the one that I'm missing that I'm really interested in seeing, and I've got to see if I can get it later today, is an ordinance from 1983. So we know that I was talking to Bob earlier. He was able to remind me of the person who headed up the initial technology group, and it was Jim Ware. Or Rare, I'm sorry.
And I think the first GIS chairman we had for a number of years was Mike Spencer when he was surveyor. But I think that's when GIS was created, and that was back in the late 90s, I think.
So a lot of work has gone on, and I did outline I think you can kind of see clearly what the mission of not only Do It is, but specifically what the mission, what our mission is relative to providing advice and information back to the Board of Commissioners. So again, when you get a chance, review that, and also feel free to dive in at the team site, look at those ordinances there, and I'll get that 1983 ordinance up just as soon as I can. So that's all I have. So I'll turn things over to Eric.
Hey, Eric, do you want to move Lynn's microphone going towards you so that could be picked up a little bit more? We could turn that one on and,
Thank you. Good idea. So really, just for the sake of time, I kind of tried to break this down into starting with the September, I believe 16th meeting where this was announced that there was a new GIS website launched, and kind of went over some of the finer points. Kavita and I had a back and forth that I was really kind of dumbfounded and wanted to articulate some things in a demonstrable kind of presentation to kind of show what I was talking about easier than I could explain it on that day. So this is the GIS website that was showed to us. There's been some changes since then, including some copy editing on this mission statement, and I support that 100%. I've always said we have to have a mission statement, like what are we doing? And now like you're met with this mission statement, and that is awesome. Like it tells you exactly what this is. So good on us for doing that. And now at least we have we have a lens in which to view what comes next. Is it accomplishing what it says at the top? Are our next step doing this? And so we're immediately confronted with a general viewer and a beacon. And just the titling shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what these are. These are both general viewers that are administered by the county DeWitt's department. One of them's labeled general viewer, one of them's named after the company. It's almost like realistically it's ESRI's general viewer and a third-party wraparound data program for ESRI map viewers as well. And so when this was showed to us, one thing that really stood out that I really struggled to understand was the reports. And today I want to focus on reports and users. It's really hard to scroll without a mouse. Anyway, I'm going to just try to find a parcel that you'd think we'd have a ton of information on, like a commercial industrial parcel that like multiple departments will have ample information on. So I'm just going to go find something around here, Sagamore and 38, somewhere around the mall. Even use the mall if we wanted to. It just takes a second to load. It's actually gotten a little bit better with loading times and stuff. And it's okay. Pick a parcel. This is one close to where I picked last night, but not the same one. Okay, so we have some data here, right? And this is just basically the data, the quick data you get when you identify the parcel. There's two reports. One takes you to Beacon, because that's where all the tax stuff lives. And then this is the report that was showed to us that I mentioned that I thought was inadequate, and there was some talk of adding other things to it, I don't know. This is the problem with this report, is that it says parcel report, and then it's just the parcel numbers and like the address. And this is just not representative of what we're capable of. This is not representative of the data that sets that we have. And anyone that misconstrues this for the actual parcel report, as I was confronted with a public information request from a Catherine Miller, complaining specifically about that after leaving that meeting, it was obvious to me that like people were actually might use this, and this is the same problem with the predecessor Sidwell system had really similar uncredible reports that were formatted with weird different colors and had like almost no information on them. And it was just clear to me that even though both of these systems are administered by the same department, they clearly just ignore what's on one system. And nobody, like ideally when you're going to launch a new system, you're building on what you already have. And my main complaint is there is no building upon anything or any functionality or any reason except to confuse people that you would launch this as your report. And let me just kind of show you how frustrating some of this is. So, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry, going back, if you would hit the other one, the other report, that takes you into Beacon, right?
Correct. It doesn't actually take you to report, it takes you to the report page of Beacon.
Okay.
Not any particular tax report, but it does lead off with the tax report. So it's okay, well like here I am, it takes us to Beacon.
So what is the purpose of the other report? Is that what you're saying?
To compete randomly by calling it a parcel report, and then, so the parcel report or the property record card are kind of used interchangeably. That is a document required by state law, governed by 50 IAC, and vetted by the DLGF and LSA. It's not something you just throw up there. And that's frustrating to me because I would love to throw up a better property report. I would love to make my own parcel report and just publish it as my parcel report, but you just can't do that. Not to say if you have a parcel report, you can't make other extraneous reports and have an unlimited amount of parcel reports on different GIS sites, but there has to be a parcel report. that complies with state law. And I'll admit, it's a bad report, and I've been pretty vocal about how lame the Indiana, but anyway, this is Beacon, right?
Hey,
This
Eric, what is that report, the one that you ran, that PDF that you created? What, when it said, what's on that?
What's on the PDF?
Because you got it down there, you already
Oh,
ran
I'm
it
sorry,
once.
this guy right here?
Yeah, what's on there?
It's just the same thing.
Exact same thing?
It just repeats some more of
Okay.
this. It just
Okay. It
puts
gives
some-
nothing.
Puts some nonsense down below it, I guess. I don't know.
And you're saying that there's a legal definition of parcel report, and this does not meet that?
Not even close.
Okay.
So let me show you what the state mandated parcel report or property record card looks like. And actually, because it's formatted so badly, Beacon takes the information on that and puts it for you on a report page. So when you go to the report page, I mean, like I said, this is a general viewer, and I'll get into the map aspect of it later, but just focusing on reports, this report page, you can pay a tax bill, you can look at old tax statements, and this is the kind of admin stuff that you have in Portal or anywhere. But then it goes further into land classifications. If there's farmland or agricultural land, it goes into site ratings and agricultural soil productivity factors. It has a complete inventory of the entire building when they were built. You can customize these tables. If it doesn't work for you, you want to see something else. It'll load other CAMA data about the buildings. This happens to have multiple buildings. It looks at evaluation history. Again, you can edit that table. It will link you to Zillow so you can see what's on the MLS. It has tax history payments, including delinquencies, et cetera. It has payments, who's paid them, what they paid, when they paid. And then it gets into document management, the reports. Okay. So then it gets into reports. And when I talk about a state-required property record card, we have, so first of all, these used to be hand-drawn. We've digitized all those and saved them for posterity. This stuff's like from the 90s. So you can look at like how it was assessed on the 90s in paper. And then it goes all the way through like our history of digital record cards all the way to the current year PRC property record card. It really looks like a DOS printout, and that's, again, state mandated design, so all these look the same, have the same information no matter where you go in the state. And they don't all look the same, but they have really similar formatting and information. It's a built-up cost workup from a craftsman cost table that has a lot of building features and formatting that are not very user-friendly, that most people don't like, that most people find this very hard to read and confusing. The solution isn't just to like launch something else, it's to have a discussion on how to make it better, talk to taxpayers and be like, what do you guys want to see? And of course we've done that, right? Because you can have supplemental addendums to these cards. And when you talk to people, especially people who own buildings like this, they'll tell you that like, we don't really care that much about replacement cost. We care about economic performance, income capitalization. We care about rent history. We care about vacancies. We care about financial indications. Taking that into advisement, we're the only counties to append our whole system, do that research, invest hundreds of thousands of dollars and decades in this research, and now every property record card, if it's income producing, has a supplemental record card. And this is pretty awesome. A lot of research goes into this. It projects market rents, vacancies, market rates of expenses, capitalization rates, PGI, EGI, NOI, and a value based on income capitalization. And it really is staggering to go through this process where you have a state-mandated record card that has a ton of information but isn't formatted in a user-formatted way, to have other like local record cards that are really cutting edge, one of the only counties to do something like this, specifically to have a way for commercial industrial property owners to make wise financial decisions, not just related to their taxes, but, and especially this could be like projected geospatially as well. So to go from like something like this, like we launched a brand new GIS website, look at the reports, it's just staggering that like somebody who administers the sites that has really specific reports for every single parcel in the county thought that like our new GIS website that we're going to post prominently would feature reports that have no information, formatted something that I would not believe. If someone gave this to me, I would not believe it even came from government. Like, it doesn't look like it just. It's just so mind-boggling. And then when I ask questions about like, what about it? So let me get into like the exchange we had and why I found that particularly.
Can I ask a question about that, Eric?
Yeah.
So is there different information that could be displayed on this report that's not being displayed?
Absolutely. I would have loved to have that discussion. When we looked into the report generators in ESRI, because we have Hub and can generate.
Because I mean, what's the point? What's the difference between? Sorry, my mic on. What's the difference between So, I mean, why have both of them displaying unless we can pull different information from both? Or even why do we even have both products? I mean, obviously, they're both are offering something different, correct? Beacon offers us one view and ESRI offers us another?
Nope, I'll get to that. Not at all. All right, so getting back to these reports, and so I think that it's clear to say that the reports in one system are superior. That report builder is a really cool tool. It could be pulling in a lot of cool information. The only issue right now is it's page limited. And we have a bunch of supplemental information we would love to put in a report builder and build a comprehensive record card with even more information. We can have these things look like appraisals. I don't think the ESRI report builder is the way to do it because these things are going to, the neighborhood descriptions alone are sometimes 10 to 20 pages. I think they're 5 or 6 page maxes. You just can't fit a lot on those reports in ESRI. But if you could, I think that would be the solution, is to compile them all there. So anyway, I think the report thing just shows a complete disconnect. And the reason for the disconnect is Beacon isn't really looked at as a general viewer a lot, but I just want to show that, you know, from the map tab, you can see here, it's not just the assessor's office stuff. There's these community layers, there's zoning, there's subdivisions, there's water information, code enforcement, soil, hydro, voting districts, layers. This could be anything. Any layer is on here. Any layer that is on here is being broadcast free to the public in a REST service. All the data in the whole county from Beacon is on a REST service. The fact that we launched a public GIS system that has like none of this information that's being projected for free and in like 2 minutes could be on there. Let me show you that. I think that's also something that is worth looking. And then I'll finish up with the user stats. But at the bottom here, there's map layers. And like, there's a lot of layers here, and this is what like, this was explained to me for the reason this was launched, was like because, you know, there's nowhere to put highway stuff. Like, where does highway go? We don't have a way for like some of these layers, which, you know, it's crazy to me because, you know, anyone who publishes a REST service, it could be on any ESRI system, it could be on Beacon. You know, we could have there could be a tab on Beacon. In addition to these layers here, which could have highway, there could be a highway tab where they just administer their own. Like we have a comp search tab that we were just like, this is really silly. Like Beacon's comp search is terrible. You should link it to ours on Hub. And you're like, okay, any other tabs you want on there? This could go like to the highway's website or wherever you guys want it to go to. It's just tons of flexibility. Do whatever you want on Beacon and on the general viewer, I guess. But the main issue of why I think Beacon is far superior for this purpose, for dealing with laymen, is it's a digital management system, a digital file management system that, here we go. Sorry. So we'll go find a property near there, Simon. Or we'll just use this one. Okay. So these reports here, I'm just a member of the public. Doesn't know who I am. This is all public stuff. But not all members of the public need the same thing. Like real estate professionals, they need to see information that's redacted to the public legally. It needs to know who you are so it can cater an experience to you. Like Eric Grossman, the public person, different than Eric Grossman, the county assessor. So right now, everything, all these files, all these record cards, this is all stuff that anyone can see. But I can tell it that I should have credentials. I think you're right. Oh. You're right, Cindy. Okay, so I told it who I am now. Now it has my name at the top. I could be a government employee. It's different if you're a real estate professional. It's different when you're a layman. But now look what it's telling me now. Look at all these internal documents. Now I have access to things that only the assessor should see. You know, this is confidential stuff. These are corporate trade secrets. These are appraisals. These are huge documents. When I mentioned, like, what are you going to do with all these documents on your new public GIS system? How the public going to see the public stuff? How the real estate professional is going to see their documents? How are you not going to throw everything there so the general public isn't bogged down with stuff that only a realtor needs to see? And they mentioned something about adding it to these reports. like as if like this thing would load with just like thousands of pages of stuff when 6-page limited. Like it didn't even, from a technical or usability sense, make any sort of coherent sense why you would, you know, there is no, it's not a, the public viewer doesn't manage users and it doesn't manage documents, and it's not viable and can't replace this. And I think when we look at who's using it, there's a big reason why people use Beacon, because it's tailored to them specifically. Also internal photos. These are things my staff have taken. We don't put all the internal photos inside buildings online for everyone to see. I mean, there's so many of them. Who knows what a lot of them have captured. And again, it's different for realtors, all these other folks. So I want to get into the open this just because at the end of it, I went through the end of the year user statistics, and then I swear I'll leave you alone for today. My goal really was to compare the reports and just show just a complete lack of connection between two GIS systems, where one was clearly built without any, like, one is really providing services to the public, and one is clearly a pet project of limited functionality. And I think the public recognizes that. Here, this is the user stats for the general viewer. About 3,600 people using it since it was launched just before May. By comparison, Beacon receives about 1,500 visits per day. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, and you can't compare the two.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Do you have any way of determining, I'm going to guess, most of those visits since May on the general viewer are coming from this building?
I was going to be generous and say, let's say 0%. Let's say all 3,600 were the public, right? Beacon, we know, because right here you can see, I'm going to pause it here. That's what I want to show. Beacon tells you these people were not logged in. And granted, sometimes I hop down there. Just now I did. I'm not logged in. I registered some stuff here. But if you look at how many tens of thousands of visits are people internally that are logged in, when I say there's 540,000 visits, I'm talking people not logged in. I'm talking the public. Yeah, obviously Beacon is used heavily by people. We know who they are. I'm not talking about the realtors, the government officials, my staff who's logged in and using it. I'm talking about the 7.5 million data requests this year, over the 540,000 visits that were just members of the public. And it just really is frustrating that if you go to Beacon, it'll say like it's administered by DoITS. It'll give you a GIS admin in DoITS name to contact, as the admin for this. But it's just like when we decide what to build, we give no consideration to what literally hundreds of thousands of visits. This is where people are consuming stuff. And my thing is, if you're going to build a system because you're going to build a whole new system and post it prominently because Stu doesn't have a place to put his stuff, like, why didn't you, I don't know, it didn't sound like Stu had the option to have a highway tab or a surveyor tab or an APC tab or own zoning tab. I mean, a lot of the stuff on Beacon has been like fights, like to get zoning on there. That was a big thing, not to have a separate zoning GIS system, but to just have a zoning layer on the county system. And that was something that enough people had to pressure the commissioners to eventually step in and make that decision. But I feel like this is what happens when you have no scope of work. You don't know who your audience is, and it really is irrelevant that every time we talk about providing services to the public, like the reason we provide this GIS system was like the user group wanted it, but the user group doesn't have any of these 540,000 visits accounted for and represented in that group. They're using state-of-the-art ESRI systems for their professional GIS jobs. They're not laymen, and we're making decisions for the laymen who use Beacon based on what we want to see as GIS professionals. And I feel like this system was launched without ever talking to a real user who isn't a GIS professional at Purdue or county government. And that's why I was making motions to revert it back, because I really think this new system is full stop. There's no functionality that's new. There's no data that's new. It links to Beacon for everything that's functional. And as much as I think we hate to admit it, Beacon is the most relevant public viewer, and intentionally distracting from it with very expensive pet projects that take decades to develop, cost millions of dollars. and have gotten us to, you know, the point of that report I just showed you is like a staggering misallocation of government funds. And I conclude my presentation for today about, again, that's just about reports. Like if you scroll down that, this gets more ridiculous. Like I cut out hours of film of me just going through that whole website. This report doesn't even get past the general viewers. And I'm happy to go of the full 2-hour presentation about how much resources seem to be misallocated, building stuff that's drastically inferior to stuff that exists somewhere else buried in that. But I think I've said enough for today.
Can I ask a question or maybe just make a comment?
Yeah.
And this is totally like not as an employee, just as an outside user. I've been house searching, that kind of thing. When I use Beacon, basically, I get on there sometimes, you know, on my phone 4, 5, 6 times a day because I'm looking for a property's history, taxes, how many times it was sold, because I'm looking for a house. And a lot of people are looking for houses right now. It's a hot market. So we've got tons of people hitting Beacon to look up and see, okay, well, did someone sell this house, flip it a year ago? And, you know, because they're wanting to see if there's any issues with the property or why it's being sold or whatever. So, yeah, you're probably getting a lot of hits that way. When I go into GIS to use that, I'm looking for completely different things. This is just as an end user. I don't do anything with GIS. I'm looking for things like section corners that I want to see, or roads or things like that, or drainage, or, you know, the aerials and how the land is draining and where there might be water problems, that kind of stuff. So it seems to me like they're both viable in different ways. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you think Beacon's being underutilized, but I guess I'm not really seeing, are you wanting to like totally do away with GIS and say that just everything should be in Beacon?
No. And
Because
so,
that's kind of how it sounded to me sitting
right. Yeah, and it's
here.
hard because, like I said, I really focused on the report.
I mean, if it's a matter of let's get the information on the website from the place where it needs to be from, so that people who are wanting to use that tool can get to that tool, you know, that's a change that we can make. But it kind of sounded to me like maybe we're acting like we don't really need the ESRI part of it, or whatever you call it, the GIS side.
Well, I think that's part of the misconception. Beacon is the ESRI part of it, in that it's an ESRI viewer with data wrapped around it. It's the
Okay.
same ESRI viewer in Portal. There's no
Okay.
difference in the map, right?
Okay.
Like it says powered by ESRI in the corner. You talk to Brent. They sell them the rights to use it.
So they're both essentially coming from the same
They're the same
place?
thing. Arc ESRI Online is if you wanted to set up your own beacon. Yeah, we should not pay full-time staff to set up a system that compete with contractors who we pay to do the same. But I actually like Arc ESRI Online. And if you see our general viewer, it's amazing what a part-time employee, like a $15 an hour employee, could set up a better general viewer than we have in Arc ESRI Online. That Arc ESRI Online, that's like out of the box with nothing like being done to it. And what's so frustrating is the REST services that we talked about on JS, that classes that the counties failed to secure in the past. Like, we're projecting out so much information. Everything on Beacon is in a REST service. Any one of you guys can go on right now, start your own Arc ESRI Online account, subscribe to Beacon's REST services, subscribe to the county's REST service and the state's REST services, and have a general viewer that blows this thing out of the water using the exact same system and free information. It's like all they would have to do is subscribe to Beacon's REST service, and they would have all that information. I'm saying if you're not going to do the very basics and hydrate it with county data, why would you launch it
Right, and I
competitively?
understand that, but I guess what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you wanted them, if you still think we need both of them, how could we improve upon that one to make it a useful tool as well? So there would be 2 tools for people instead of just the one. Do you see what I mean?
Right, and how many tools we have and how many we put out there, that's all part of the discussion. And I'm not here to say, like, I have a definitive answer, and I don't, what I'm saying is we should have what we're trying to provide and label it clearly. I mean, when you go on there, most laymen don't know what a beacon and a general viewer are.
Right, but aren't they labeled on the front as well as to what they do? Like,
Oh, yeah, it gets even, and then it's even more confusing. Like,
Right.
that's part of my presentation is how confusing that cluster of things is. You have your property, because you have property taxes that links you to Beacon. Because property taxes and GIS have always been separated, and even though there's a GIS system that has all the property tax and assessment stuff in one place, we still have separate links. That basically you have a GIS thing that links to Beacon for all sort of tax and assessment stuff. You have a property tax link that basically takes you to Beacon for property information and taxes. And then you have paying your bills, which are our biggest revenue stream. The most bills that you think want to be paid is property taxes. I don't know if you followed that link on the website. It's so crazy. You go through all these links, and you end up at Beacon's splash page, expecting to find the parcel and just know to go to the report page and pay the bill on it. But yeah, basically you have all these links that in a roundabout way funnel you to the splash page of Beacon and expect you to go to the parcel report and know how to use this stuff.
Well, you can blame me for that, because 99% of the time when I get calls about Beacon, it's from the public, it's because they're looking to either pay their taxes online or they're looking for the property information such as tax history, you know, legal description, that kind of thing. So generally, that's what we usually call that link, is property tax information and tax payments, because that's the two biggies that we get when we get public call-in about that.
Right. So I got online payments, right? It's more of a logistical thing. I think it's great that we're pointing people there. I'm just saying, like, if you were to go here, right, and you're like, well, I want to pay my property taxes. So property tax payments and information. And then it takes you here, and it's like, okay, I have to property tax information and payment link. I'm like, okay, this is how I pay my taxes. It says follow this link to find out how you can pay your property taxes and when. So my impression, you know, I know nothing, right? I'm going to follow this. This is going to how I'm going to pay my taxes, right? It just takes you to like Beacon's splash page. Oh, anyway, there's another step in the middle. Then it takes you here, and it says like, okay, tax bills once a year in installments. That tells you there's like a link to Beacon, and it says access Tippecanoe account. And there's like more stuff you have to read. Timely payments. Tells you can take credit cards. Okay, so then I have to go here. It says access Tippecanoe property information and pay taxes. It just takes you, and then it's like, okay, how am I going to pay? So then, like, I have to know to like search for me and then go to the tax thing. The other reason, like, you compare, and that actually reminded me of something that was in the presentation. Beacon is not a, it doesn't just look at geospatial stuff. If you type my name into an ESRI product, it'll bring up things that are geocoded Grossman. It'll bring up the rental property I own. But like if you type my name into Beacon, this is something like we want to work with Julie, and I know she's pretty excited about. It'll bring up the same duplex, but it'll also bring up my personal property record. And this has nothing to do with geocoding or map. There's people who have put gravestones on here, who have political candidates on there. You can have a political candidate, all their CF1 forms. Yep.
I'm sorry. You've spent so much time in the minutia, and I just get lost.
Sorry.
Can you say in one sentence what you want? Just at a very high level, just a very high level. Kind of pull yourself up to 50,000 feet and just say what is the mission statement for this presentation?
We're wasting all of our GIS funding duplicating efforts. We should have a scope of work that clearly defines where the services are, and we should fund making those services comprehensive and better for people, instead of infighting over how many different sites we're going to post and how we're going to fight over the scraps. I mean, like I told Tracy, right now we're like Stalin. We're like, let's have our generals fight over the glory, when really we should be working towards a common goal. And I tried to show the disparity, to show there is no common goal. There's just a lot of throwing stuff out there. And that's my thing, is someone needs to create a scope of work and like take a leadership role.
Scope of work for
like the things she uses GIS for, the things the public does. Like, how are we going to deliver this? Where is it going to go? What are we going to call it? What's going to be there? And I think that's what the new GIS system was supposed to be, I think, right?
scope of work for how GIS is used, like both internally and by the public.
No, so there's a scope of work for what IT is going to do. Like there's a written bullet pointed list of do its goals, right? GIS is devoid from that. There is no scope of work or goals for GIS, so I'm trying to show you what the result of that is. It's this new system that has no functionality and a huge budget. I would like there to be a discussion about what functionality we want and budget allocated to doing that. And I feel like it does seem like I'm the only one talking about the functionality or representing the many people who take advantage of that functionality, rely on it in their day-to-day jobs. I mean, I feel like the real estate community specifically who uses this is a huge part of our local economy. And I think that's lost on a lot.
So can we pull it up another level? What, just what is the purpose, and maybe this is what you're saying there, what is the purpose of Beacon versus GIS?
Beacon is a GIS system.
Okay, but the general GIS, when you pulled that up and there was the right and the left and I could pick one, I don't know which one to pick.
Exactly. How could you? As a
So
layman, how
what,
could you?
do we internally know what the difference is between the two? So that's the first problem, is we don't know what the purpose of the right
that's
and
kind
the
of what I'm
left
trying to
is.
describe here.
I think
Like,
there's a label on them that basically tells you one is a general viewer for the layers, for all of the layers that are done. And like I said, the link to Beacon is basically published as property tax or property information and tax payments online, because that's 99% of what we get
So,
called about people wanting it for.
so Beacon is property,
That's what we get. I'm not
And
saying
then-
it can't do more than that. I'm just saying
right,
that's
and then
what we get
GIS is
requested.
everything else.
It's everything. If you just want to go look at the layers, like you want to turn on roads, or you want to turn on section corners, or you want to turn on drainage, or, whatever
It's
is
everything
relevant
else.
to you. That's how I understand it and the way I've used it.
I guess I disagree. That's just one, and that's one, I understand where she's coming from. I understand where she's coming from, but that's not exactly, I mean, they're both general viewers that can display any information. I guess the point I was trying to make too about this, when you look up.
So do we
mining-
need two viewers?
Oh, these are the two general viewers. We have much more than just two
But
viewers.
do we need two general viewers then? Is Beacon just a shortcut to the property information?
Well, no, I mean, that's the IT's perspective on it, is that.
I mean,
we
I've
get-
never seen where I can get layers like, which maybe I've never delved into it because I don't usually use it for that. But I've never seen where I can go and look up like the section corners or this or that on Beacon. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done, but do I need an internal login to do that? Or is that something that people out in the general public can do from that?
Yeah, and I just showed you too, how you see all the, like I said, they're both.
Right, and
little-
I didn't know if you were signed
Right.
in.
No, and I mean, that's the whole purpose, is like, I didn't see something on Beacon. If you don't see something on Beacon, to me, it's very frustrating when it's like, well, cool, let's add it to Beacon. That's great. Maybe it's not there, and if it's not there, put it on there like you would any other layer in any other GIS system. I don't understand I didn't see this on Beacon. I'm going to prominently launch a new GIS system that just has this and has nothing else. Because when you say it's to see the layers, there's a ton of layers that aren't there. That's the baffling part, that description. Like, for the longest time, I wanted descriptions and missions. Now that we have those, the systems don't do that. It's to see all the layers. They don't subscribe to the REST services that has the layers that, like you said, people want to see. Because it's not just the data. They want to see that as data and as a layer. Like, the whole GIS system, they're just databases that can look at the data on a map or geospatially. And the last point about this Beacon thing is that it's not just geospatial data. It's any data. Like, this is not geospatial. Beacon has no idea where my dishwasher is. But because there is a database of property that is not geocoded, and that's why it can search candidates, it can search anything. I mean, anything government wants to catalog here, it can catalog, whether it's geocoded or not. Whereas ESRI is specifically a geodatabase. It can't hold, well, I guess it could. It's not set up to hold or be a public repository for non-geocoded information like Beacon is. That's another major advantage.
I want to jump in here real quick, and I'm going to say something on behalf of Eric, and if I get any of this wrong, let me know. In our many conversations about this in recent months, this is not about one system is better than the other system. It's about how we are utilizing the systems is what it's about. And I go back, as I was looking through these ordinances, and I go back to Ordinance 2001-09-CM from April 2nd of 2001. It was the ordinance that established the MITS department, basically. And it said the department shall coordinate its activities with the Tippecanoe County Surveyor's Office and other county offices to prevent unnecessary duplication and overlapping of services. And I don't think we have a finer example of that occurring than what we're dealing with right now. And the problem as I have experienced it in the recent months is that everybody has their idea of what's right for us to use. Everybody has their silo, if you will. Not everybody, and as Eric and I have talked about this, and I know he's very passionate about it, it has really boiled down to the money side of it. And is it, and are we truly doing the best job that we can with what we present to the folks out there who use these services? And the numbers absolutely don't lie. And I can tell you, while I respect the comment about the real estate market, what it is today, I've been using Beacon as long as I've been in the commercial or in the commissioner's office, and I know a lot of other people use it. I go to it because it's easy and it has the data sets that I need. That doesn't mean that I'm married to one or the other, but it seems to me that we ought to be able to pull ourselves together on this and look at what we're funding right now, and more importantly, look at what our users see, because believe me, the people in government are a very small percentage of the folks that are consuming the information coming from both of the sites. So I think our focus has to be on eliminating duplication, if that's possible, maybe determining what the capabilities of both are. And like I said, I'm not married to one idea or the other, but it's very clear that MITS and ultimately this advisory board were tasked with looking at this very problem and trying to come up with a way to fix it. And we won't fix it today, and we could be here another 3 hours at least talking about the merits of the systems and how we got to where we are, but our focus ought to really be on where we're going to go moving forward. And I guess I wouldn't mind seeing some really detailed user information, whatever could be provided to us in a report. And again, I know that you just looked at that one feature, and there's a lot of other stuff in there that you could probably look at and be able to tell us collectively, folks from DoIT and Eric's office, how these are being used, and maybe provide us some guidance.
Yeah, and I'll provide the user report that I kind of referenced at the end of this, which in the presentation I said I would provide it as well instead of focusing on each little thing. But again, about the, thank you, Tracy, by the way, I agree with all that. And about the comments about users and what's tied to the real estate market, we also have Hub, which is ESRI Online, very similar to Portal, but it's administered on a third-party server. We don't advertise it. There are public things, but it's really just a research tool to be used by Purdue, the cities, and government to collaborate on joint research. And it's mostly an internal thing, but that has about twice the user of Port. It's an internal tool used with a handful of researchers and other people, but like the user stats on that blow Portal out of the water, and it's not even a public GIS system. I mean, and so, and there's no one in there researching, like MLS. There's no links to MLS. There's no property tax payments. It's just like, it really is pretty, I think, an internal tool. So I mean, just judging it based on that, because there have been times where we've opened that up to the public for like voter registration maps and where the voting locations are, and we've gotten like 15,000, hits in a small period of time, whereas like the most used map in Portal since its launch is I think 10,000, mostly internal views. I mean, comparing it to like any other GIS, not just Beacon, it really is a lot of resources for a system not many people are using, despite its prominent display of,
I guess since you're kind of responding to what I said, I guess I sort of view them differently. Beacon more as the, I want to say it, everyday average users way into GIS and into that information. And then I always looked, I guess, at the internal GIS viewer as more of an elevated, for a more experienced or more advanced user, if that makes any sense to you.
You've never seen it as internal versus external, because I believe
No,
that's...
I never have, and
Okay.
I mean, I was here years ago, before they even converted to this. I've been here since 2004, and I used to actually attend the meeting and take the minutes for them back then, so I've sat in on a lot of the meetings. I guess I never viewed it as an internal, external. It always seemed to me like more like the GIS viewer was for the more advanced user, if that's, for lack of a better word, to use. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Zach, I have a question for you, and then I want us to wrap things up as quickly as we can. Have you ever, in your experience, you've been with the surveyor's office for a long time, and I'm going to guess that you probably use Portal for your office more than Beacon?
Well, the answer to that question is, sorry. The answer to that question is we use a little bit of everything, and it depends on who in my office, which staff member sometimes dictates what they use because of, as Cindy pointed out, either skill level and/or data sets relevant to what they need. So yes, we use anything from Portal to Beacon to ESRI, and even within ESRI, I have some staff members that only use the viewer or the reader, and some that actually have editing abilities that can actually edit the data layers, right? So we have a wide range of skill sets in my office, and so between different staff members and their positions. So yes, we use pretty much all the above. And so if you don't mind, can I make a few other comments while I have the floor? I've sat quietly for a while, and I've been listening to the presentation, and many things I agree with. I'm going to try to summarize some things. First of all, I want to go back and reference a comment that Bob made, and Tracy, this kind of ties into your question also. Historically, and Cindy just alluded to it, but Bob mentioned that one of the previous county surveyors, two before me, Mike Spencer, I think initially was the chair of the GIS board. So I want to spend just a few seconds and give a recap of that, because I think that's important because it aligns with what Eric's talking about. So we've got to understand the history here. So if you remember, Tippecanoe County was one of the first counties in the state of Indiana that actually had a GIS system that started in the early 90s, and one of the kickstarters of that was the local surveying community, the professional surveyors here and the businesses came to the commissioners and the council and the county surveyor's office and said, hey, we need to get our section corner perpetuation program off the ground and running, because the section corner perpetuation program and the section corners themselves is what the actual foundation and the concrete that all this is built off of, right? And so that started in the early 90s, and one of my fellow colleagues that has passed away, Dale Grimes, was hired by Mike Spencer in like 1990, and he spent his entire around approximately 10 years at the county doing the section corner perpetuation program. That was the foundation of what we're working with now. Everything's been added to that. And so around that time in the early mid-90s, that's when the GIS Policy Board, I think Bob was referencing, was created. When Steve Murray became county surveyor in 2000, he also took over as the chair of that GIS board. And then when I became county surveyor in 2010, I was the chair of it for just a few months, because at that time there was a transition going on, and that's when that GIS board was lumped into this body, and this group as we know it today was formed and now exists. Exactly. And so yeah, Tracy's got the history on this. So I was part of all that, and I remember it very well. So I understand why we did that, and I actually supported it at the time, and I'm not bringing this up because I'm looking for more work. That's not the point. I'm just lining this out, so history, because it makes sense with what Eric's talking about. We did away with that board, and one of the reasons why that board existed to begin with is try to do away with duplication of efforts. And if I understand what Eric is saying, that's one of your complaints or concerns or issues, is duplication of efforts. And so I fear we may have self-inflicted wound by doing away with that board. We've now created a situation where we've caused ourselves to have some duplication. Whether that may or may not be, I'm just lining out the history there. So with that said, I still agree with what Tracy said before. While the history is relevant so we understand, I don't think we need to focus on that. We need to be forward focused where we're going from here, and I support that 100%. And Eric, I'm going to say this, and it kind of goes with what David said a few minutes ago. I like David, I get kind of lost in your minutia sometimes. You get so deep in the weeds. While I agree with many of your points, maybe not all of them, but many of them, I get kind of lost. So David, thank you for asking that, and I appreciate your answer. And where I'm going with this is that I did listen to your answer, and I agree with that. But what I hear, I guess your answer was more in mind, but what I heard was more of a goal or some things that we need to look at. But what I was going to ask about the same time David spoke up is, okay, I hear a presentation of many concerns and complaints and likes and dislikes, but what I haven't heard yet is solutions. So where are do you have solutions, or are you looking to this board for solutions? Where's the solutions at? I see we have problems, but where's the solutions? That's my question.
I just have problems. I have no.
Okay.
No, so this started where I started making motions to rearrange the public JS website, and they were confusing motions because I was, they made sense in my brain to start with, and then made a lot less sense in my brain, and clearly made sense in no one else's brain. So I was like, I would like to do a presentation to kind of show the basis for why I'm making like these seemingly like shot from the hip motions to like rearrange the public site, right? And I hope that I've established some justification and some legitimate concerns for not having a bunch of general viewers. I mean, like, yeah.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
That the place to start might be, and you and I have had this discussion, and I think even Zach and I have had this discussion, and I think we all are, our heads explode when we get real deep into this. To me, it would still be helpful, and maybe a combination of Eric's staff and Kent's staff could work together to come up with something that is very visual that explains the different types of data. And I think somebody took a stab at this once before, but it really wasn't quite clear enough, as I recall. But take a stab at putting something together that visually illustrates what the types of data that are collected by what we're doing right now. Even and not make an assumption that it's good or bad, but look at that and then coordinate that visual piece with any of the reports that are available, based on what Eric can get or what Mitz can get, and then make a determination as to, we may even have to get some professional help in here or look to some things that have been dealt with before. I know in my conversations with ESRI, I'll make everybody feel a little bit better. And again, they're a contractor, and we give them a lot of money every year. But I did ask the question, are we the only ones to be in the condition that we're in right now, where we have duplication, competing interests, and working to get everybody to coalesce on a mission that has us all pulling on the same end of the rope? And as I shared with you in a previous meeting, I was relieved to know that we're not the only ones dealing with that, and other folks out there have overcome that. And I feel very confident that we can too, but it's going to take some work.
Are there professional consultants that do this kind of work, that would come in, maybe start from scratch, look at what are our needs, what are our resources, figure out gaps and duplications, and then make recommendations? I mean, we are spending a lot of money on this, so let's make sure we're spending it wisely. And I don't know if that service exists, but that's what I would do in
That would be
corporate America.
that would certainly be the step after. I mean, because the first question they're going to ask is, what do you have right now? What do you have right now?
Yeah.
Aren't you kind of in advanced discussions with ESRI consultants, the people who build, granted they're contractors, but they also build our software? And we used to, like, there are other contractors that we've previously hired, like Sidwell, who are exclusively ESRI contractors. But I don't know, what do you think about the advice you've gotten from the people who build the software we buy?
Well, and I shared with the board before, and we're just wrapping up. In fact, I think the last meeting between ESRI reps, they provide sort of a value-added service where they meet and talk to people who are on the user end and try to determine where there could be more collaboration and where do you have gaps. They have done tomorrow when they meet with, I think they're with your office tomorrow, that'll be the last internal group, other than I think we're going to look at maybe a meeting with commissioners and council as well. So that certainly that's part of what that was intended for, but it was down and it was geared down to the user level. So there's some potential there as well.
The other thing that I just find so interesting about hearing, oh, she left, Cindy, talk about her behind her back, and Zach talk about the historical stuff, is that historically, it's always been the assessor being like, Beacon really does everything. Like, I know you perceive it not to, but let's talk about what it actually does and not what you perceive it to do. And it's always kind of been everyone else being like, I use, Reader and ArcMap and now Portal and ArcESRI Online, and kind of like almost a divide over like, I don't know, the assessor's office versus everyone else. But then most recently, and why this is so relevant and not just bitching about the past, is it really has flipped recently to where the commissioners and IT have like doubled down on Beacon and been like, Beacon's going to be our digital signature contractor, and not only that, you're going to store the information that's collected in Beacon in GeoPermits. You're not going to use the database you're using. And at least with the building commissioners, like appended the database he had, and they're forced to keep their information in Beacon. That stuff is going to be locked in that vending machine, whether we like it or not. They're going to process our digital signatures, and we're like, whoa, we have a much better digital signature contract that's integrated through CoFile with ESRI Online, can hydrate forms, populate, send data back and forth. Like, the future of public JS is probably not Beacon, but ESRI Online, if we're going to be real serious about digital forms and not paying Beacon God knows how much money over the next decade. And, you know, if every form is going to be $100,000, 18 months debacle, we're going to pay them 6 figures just for that. I mean, it just, so like now the assessors is like, Beacon is like way too intrusive. They've gone beyond conveying stuff to the public. They're now controlling our data, our work processes, our digital signatures, and it's way more expensive than we're doing this right now with like ESRI Online and CoFile. And
I do want to clarify.
And so like we've really kind of, I think that's the confusing part too, is like, is these, I think we've showed our ability to pivot based on what's practical, and we're not just Beacon's great because right now it's just the public JS system is so much better than the stuff we're putting out there, but from a business side, I think it's really going off the rails.
Just so you know, Beacon, those folks were all heavily involved in what's going on with the building commission and everything. I was not involved in that process, and we have not settled on what we're going to be using for digital signatures and things like that. That deal doesn't have anything to do with the rest of what we're doing. So,
well, I mean, it does for us because I mean, like what we're building functionality out in, we need to know how to integrate digital forms, and it's very different if we're going to use Beacon, who's cut us off from using CoFile, to sell us services that can, like we used to be able to integrate Beacon with CoFile till Beacon's like, this is huge business. Get rid of them. Hey, you want to sign up for our stuff that costs 4 times as much? And then we were like, yeah, we do. And now, so they're not going to let us have, so like Beacon isn't going to integrate with CoFile now. We have to, or as ESRI now without a third-party integrator. So anyway, there is a lot of moving parts and functionality we're trying to create, and it would be great to create it for one system and not have to duplicate or have it work in one and link to the other, et cetera. So it's not just like bitching about what happened. It's like we have actual services we're trying to provide right now, and this would add a lot of direction to our fiscal efforts as well.
May I make a couple comments? Eric, I want to tell you this. I support your goal, all right, and it's a noble goal and a good cause, because everybody knows, or at least I think they do, that within government at all levels, it's because of the nature of the beast, it's very easily for duplication to happen and wasteful spending and not using taxpayer money efficiently, because there tends to be pockets of people doing different things and they don't always communicate, right? And so it's a noble effort. I support the effort 100%. And also know that because of the history that I talked about, that we've somewhat been on a digital crazy train, all right? And what I mean by that is that over the last 10 to 15 years, we've had offices scanning files in, and we've got more digital data. And as time has went on, especially in the land, I'm sure Kent can back me up on this, over the last 5 years or so, storage, the cost of storage, terabytes of data, has went down drastically. I mean, and so, because I remember 10, 12, 15 years ago, being able to actually, we had the ability to scan things in, but the storage cost was astronomical. And so what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 10 years, one of which we've had all this digital information coming at us here at the county from all kinds of sources, our own offices, so on and so forth. Expectations of the public have changed, softwares have changed, costs have went down, so on and so forth. And so I say all of that to put a bow on this topic, as in it's a very noble effort. I support the cause of trying to find a better way of sharing and displaying our data and being able to use it. I will highlight one statement that Cindy made, because I don't want us to lose track of this, and I'm glad she made it, because what she said is my recollection also. There's a difference. I want to be clear on the difference of optics. There's a difference between internal users, external users, and also like advanced users and maybe 101 ground level users, all right? And so we want to be cognizant of that because we don't necessarily want to present our data, and this has been the historical thought, we want to be careful in how we present the data to the general public because there are all levels of skilled users on the public end of it. And so we want to make sure that's taken care of. But back to the solution standpoint, I guess I would make a motion that we investigate a consultant or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure who does that, but we need a holistic view, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because it does need to be evaluated because we have different softwares doing different things. Technology has changed. We need to be able to make it more user-friendly, is the general thought process, and eliminate duplication of efforts. So, thank you.
I agree with that, and I think that was just the scope of work. My comment about the scope of work, if you said, like, we want to have digital forms and display these layers, and here's a list of layers in the departments they go to, and we want to have people be able to pay their tax bills and process credit cards and manage forms and documents and use you. If you wrote out what you want it to do, that's what I was saying. I don't think anyone would look at that list of functionality we need from this system and who the users are, and maybe you have a login for advanced users and realtors and layman users and government, whatever. If you had that list of all the functionality, I just don't think it would result in those two links side by side. So I don't think anyone would say, like, let's have a ESRI and a Beacon ESRI and put some of it here and some of it here. And I mean, that's what I'm saying is it doesn't look like what we have is reflective of what you just suggested, and I support your motion.
Do you support it in the form of a second?
I guess that's my question. My follow-up discussion to you before officially supporting your motion, no, I don't, Lynn, is do we really need a contractor to tell us what, maybe we need a contractor to tell us how to get there, but we don't, like, what are we going to tell this contractor? Like, I think that's what's on us, is we need to, that's what we didn't have with Beacon, and they walked all over us, it was a disaster. We didn't come to them with a scope of work, say, how's the best way to do this? Not say, like, how do I get Beacon to do this, or how do I get ESRI, like, how do I get this functionality? And see if they say, hire full-time staff, and hire Beacon, and hire contractors, and put 5 things out there, and I just don't see them doing that. I think they're going to have a much more objective, less historical way to get there. And so
I'd be tickled to death if we had a system that we owned. Sorry, I turned it off. I'd be tickled to death if we had one system that did everything that hub and our internal or our GIS and Beacon did all in one stop. I mean, that would be perfect, but we're going to have to give some thought to what and maybe that is, is that a realistic goal? The only way I know to get there is to assess what we have right now, break down and look at all the costs, because again, reports don't lie, and when you look at the spend, I think it's going to be pretty amazing.
those reports are comparing a system that costs $23,000 a year, Beacon, versus whatever it costs to administer Hub, full-time staff, servers, software licenses, some 6-figure number, probably annually just from full-time staff. You can't compare them financially or functionally. And that's why it really is crazy that one is viewed as for advanced users, but has very little information or tools that an advanced user would find practical. That's the part that blows my mind, is that perception is so detached from the reality of them. And that was part of my presentation today.
Thank you. We have a dangling motion there.
Yeah.
Would you restate that?
Before I do, I want to make one point of clarification, because it just occurred to me, and I'd forgotten it. I don't know who orchestrated this, but I was invited to have a meeting with representatives of ESRI and go over, I don't know if that was orchestrated by the commissioners or the IT department. I thought every department head, it was the commissioners? Okay, because it was been a few months ago, and I'd forgotten it. Eric just said something that reminded me of this. But I'm saying this because I'm going to tie this back to my motion. I had this pretty much the exact same conversation right over there in the Grand Prairie room when I met virtually with the ESRI consultants, because what Eric's talking about, I have seen over the last several years myself. The problem is, much like we talked about, I'm not entirely sure there's an easy button to push for a solution. That's what really worries me, because I have similar concerns, but have not beat the drum as hard necessarily, because I like to have solutions to offer, and I don't really have one, because I don't know what the right answer is. Now, back to my motion, I guess I would say I motion or move to, my motion is that this board at least speak to a consultant, a contractor that does this, because I'm pretty sure that there are people that actually do a holistic view and then make a recommendation. And I thought that's what the ESRI folks were doing. And so that's what I'm trying to say. So thank you.
Okay, so the motion may not be necessary, because, but I'll let the board decide that, because what has happened is there have probably been a series of, I think, 9 or 10 meetings to date between ESRI and various departments in county government. I think probably the only ones that we have left would be the elected officials and probably APC, and then that would cover all the major players with, and what they have been tasked with doing, what Brent Sherman and his crew have been tasked with doing, is providing us a report of their findings based on those interviews and those little, I would call them micro training systems or sessions. They asked questions, talked about what potential uses would be, and the whole goal of this process was basically, it's one sentence, was to create frictionless collaboration in county government using the ESRI tools, basically, that we've already bought and paid for and we use on a daily basis. And I anticipate that we could likely have that final report back to us sometime in early January, certainly before our next board. What I will do for this board is I'll send a list out of everybody that they've met with so far, and if there's anybody that's missing, we can get them added to the schedule and get that taken care of quickly. But it was they helped us build a list, and then we just helped them schedule and get access to the elected officials or department heads, and then they held those individual meetings. So there may be others that we've missed out there, but it's been, we're 9 or 10 deep right now.
With that said, I'll withdraw my motion and wait on the report.
Okay, very good. Anything else on this or any other issues? Okay, final motion.
Move to dismiss?
Yep. Second.
We are adjourned.